welcome back. I thought that I would go over my garden journal from last year. It occurred to me in some conversations that I have been having that not all new gardeners know that most of us who have been gardening for a while actually journal about our gardens. It helps us keep track of what we did last year, and it helps us learn, and it helps us in reflecting, and it helps us grow as gardeners. So here is my journal from last year, and I'm just going to flip through it, just kind of show you what I did, what I liked, what I didn't like, and then I'll just give you an idea of things that you could try or ideas that you may have when you are creating your own journal. Okay, so the first thing that I was going to do was put quotes from people that I respect as gardeners on the front, but you can see that I didn't go through with that, or I didn't keep up with it. And so I just have one, and it says, "Be a student of your own garden." And it's by Jenny, who is the proprietor of Creekside Nursery in Dallas, North Carolina. And they have a YouTube channel called Gardening with Creekside, and she's wonderful and in my zone. And that really resonated with me, to be a student of your own garden, especially as a former teacher and a former student myself. That really spoke to me. Another thing that I keep in all of my garden journals is a reference guide of just things that are helpful to remember. So these were our freeze dates, according to NC State, was March 26th to April 1st, and then November 3rd to November 9th. Usually in Zone 7B, North Carolina, you're safe after April 12th, April 15th or so. But it is nice that NC State does release freeze dates every year. This past year, we did have a late freeze that caught a lot of us by surprise. And we were out there covering our plants as best we could. Another thing that I have are just some reminders, like a pH of 7 is neutral, 0 to 6 is acid soil, and 8 to 14 is alkaline soil. Then I mapped out my garden beds. So I've got both sides of my house. So here's the front of my house and my porch and my steps down. And this is not drawn to scale, and it's actually not all that accurate, but it does kind of let me know what I'm planning on doing and what my overall kind of idea for my garden is. So I have 3 giant oak trees out front, and a lot of my front beds are shade because of them. And my idea was just to get some different foliage colors, which you can see here, and some bulbs in, which I did. And these are my azaleas that line the front of the house. And I've got 2 big planters in the front as well. And I have my lilac bush and a hydrangea and some more hosta. And it just kind of gives me an idea of what my garden plan is. It is obviously not a formal garden plan. It's just kind of a mapping for my own understanding. I'm not very good spatially, and it's helpful to me so that I remember what I'm trying to accomplish here. So this is the back. There's our building. Here is our back fenced in area for the dogs. And then this is the back garden. So here's the vegetable garden over here, my azalea beds, the dogwoods, the tulip tree. And then this has actually ended up being a lot bigger than that. And I have put in a full sun bed here. I used to have a hedge right here, and that has been pulled out. And in the back, I've added a few things. So it's also nice to see how far I've come and what's changed. And it helps remind me of what I set out to accomplish at the beginning of the prior year. So other things that I do is I will write post-its and stick them in the book just so that I know things that are important, things I want to check off my list. So things that this book was missing is it had a note section. I wanted to change the note section to a reminder section. I wanted a spot for a to-do list. I wanted to add a monthly to-do list, a journal section, and I didn't want to use the whole book. So in this one, you can see that I've got a lot of empty pages, but because of the way that I spaced the book out, it didn't allow for enough room for me to add the next year at the end. So that was a big change for this year, as I got tired of having one book per year, and I wanted to have one book over multiple years. So at the beginning of all of my journals, I have a content section that lets me kind of know how I have split up my journal for that year. This year I split it by what I was growing. So I have the vegetable garden, my cut flower areas, my perennial beds, and my hardscapes. This year I have done a similar content section. I think next year we'll break it up by flower beds because I would like to start growing some annual vegetables in my full sun beds, especially things in the cooler seasons when I might not have a lot going on in those beds. So like carrots maybe and cabbages and things like that would be neat and pretty to see in mixed with a flower bed. So this was my vegetable garden in 2022. I had the original raised bed, and then I had plans to put an in-ground bed around the raised beds. I also had a asparagus bed, which is now this entire bed is asparagus. But I had originally planned to put in herbs in this section and then just asparagus in the back section. But I decided in the end that we ate a lot more asparagus than that. And so I kind of changed my mind on that and just planted asparagus all the way up to my rosemary bush, who's still deciding if she's going to stay with us or not. So here are my notes from 2022. Tomatoes, string trellis the determinants. I was going to try a string trellis method. That is not what I ended up doing, but it was an idea that I had. Mesclun greens, I wanted to stagger the plantings every 2 weeks for a total of 5 plantings. Spinach, again, stagger. Beans, I wanted to get information on legume inoculate and powdery mildew. Strawberries, I said I bought way too many. I needed strawberry pots, which I did grow strawberries in pots last year. They did not overwinter. Only the ones that were grown in the bed overwintered. And then my questions were, how did cantaloupe and pumpkin do? I didn't grow them. How did July beans do? I didn't put July beans in. And then I also wanted to grow marigolds, basil, and thyme in pots. And I actually put basil in the flower bed with my tomatoes, but it's not doing well. So I've bought a couple more plants that I'm going to put somewhere else. I haven't really decided where yet, but I'm going to try a different location and see if that'll help. This is how I trellised my tomatoes last year. I did 3 poles per plant and tied the tomatoes up. It was working as of July 6, 2022. What ended up happening is my tomatoes outgrew the trellis, but because we had framing along the sides of the raised bed, I just tossed them over the top of the framing and then they just grew back down to the ground and it worked out really well. My cucumber trellis, I was letting the cucumbers attach to the fencing we put up along the side of the bed, and I left the back open for easy access, and that worked out really well. This year we plan on enclosing the entire thing, and so I have moved the cucumbers over to the other side. Not that I would have put them on the same spot anyway, but that's one of the reasons that I moved them over. Soil amendments. For the blueberry beds, I top dressed the right bed with compost and wood chips. It doesn't say what I did to the left side. Maybe nothing. The brand new beds, the 2x4 were untreated. So this is the raised beds. The 4x4 posts are cedar. I didn't know that. I didn't remember that. Then we put down oak logs, leaves, compost, blood meal, peat moss, vermiculite, and compost mixture, 1/3 each. So there's that Mel's mix. I forgot about the blood meal, and it looks like I put more compost in. The herb bed, I top dressed the asparagus and around the rosemary with compost, and then we covered with arborist chips. So it's good to know that that's been top dressed. Planting time. So then I color coded everything, and this is how I planted last year. So there's no way I put those in March. Oh, that must be May. Okay. So I planted the tomatoes in May. I did underplant with watermelon. That worked out well. The cucumbers did really well there. The zucchini almost immediately got squash bugs and vine borers, and I just ripped them out and tossed them because I was not going to deal with that. I did not plant dill last year, but I have it this year. The strawberries now take up this entire bed, but that is how they started, was that little front section. The spinach did really well. The mesclun greens did really well. The okra did really well. I didn't plant that okra until July. I have okra in now, and it's June. So I wanted to start seeds indoors, and I started to make a list of when I was planning on doing that. It did not happen. I had a baby girl instead. We did put drip irrigation in. This does look really messy, but that is basically what we did. We drained a drip line from the front of the house all the way down the side. Up here, I trenched it the whole way, and it pops out back here. And then we connected 1/4-inch tubing up into the beds. Now, these up here never came into existence. There are blueberries up here, as you've seen, and then we have this bed and the asparagus bed. This year we added a bed over here that's a raised bed instead of an in-ground planting because of the weed pressure. And then on this side we added the 2 other raised beds. So things that I was worried about were, how can we get the strawberry pots on drip? Did I want to add soaker hoses to the back beds? Those would be the flower beds. And can we put the cut beds on soaker? Do we want to use a sprinkler? Could run a drip from the grill spigot. So the grill spigot, we decided not to do that because it would have to run under a brick walkway, and we really didn't want to mess with that. So I just hand watered. And here is probably the most valuable thing that I have in this journal, and it is my notes. And last year I did them based on the plant, but I planted a lot less last year than I did this year. So this year I am doing it by the date. So I just go in, I put the date, and then kind of update everything that I've done so far. So last year, you can see I would put carrots and then talk about all the things I did with carrots. So I direct sowed in February. I did square foot gardening. So I did 1 square, short and sweet variety, 1/2 inch down, covered, patted, watered. Then I direct sowed 1 square of Chantenay, the Shan variety. I'm probably saying that wrong. I apologize. So on February, I had no sprouts. I would try again. And then March 8th, we had sprouts. And I did not resow. So that was the original sowing. It just took a little while. So that was happy. And that was in February to March. So that's good. I planted very late this year. The lettuces I started in February as well. They did really well. I had some notes on thinning them. And I had no sprouts still on the 22nd. So it seems like February 10th is just a little early. By the 28th, though, I had sprouts on the mesclun and spinach. And then by the 8th of March, we had new leaves. And I planted more. And then by April, we had aphids. Ugh. And asparagus, oh my goodness, that was a whole thing. So I bought 3 Martha Washington crowns and put in the asparagus bed. Now there was asparagus when we moved in, which is why I call it the asparagus bed. I discussed that I was going to do a mounded row in the middle. I was waiting on the burpee order, which was the Millennium asparagus. There's Martha Washington and Millennium's asparagus in that bed. And I planted 8 Millennium. I don't know if it says, 3 Martha Washington and 8 Millennium. So I planted 11, plus we have what was already in there, and then I gave the rest away. And I planted oregano. And that came back this year. The blueberries are doing just fine. And he had said the high bush may not yield well, but they seem to be doing well. And I had holes dug all around the blueberries last year. I have them again this year. I don't know what it is. They do nothing to the plants. The plants are not disturbed ever. But they dig holes around the plants. So I do have grubs. It could be moles. It could be squirrels. It could be chipmunks. It could be skunks. It could be raccoons. It could be anything. So I have bought a trail cam. The SD card came today. And I'm going to put it up, I think, tomorrow. And we're going to see what is out there. I heard something when I'm on the back porch right now. I heard something outside when I came out here to record. It was making all kinds of noises. I don't know what it was though. It didn't sound like a fox. We had foxes in Greenville, and I feel like I know what those sound like. So it might have been a coyote, maybe. We do have those in the neighborhood, so I'm not sure. Strawberries, I planted Jewel, Early Glow, and Flavor Fest. May and June, I had lots of berries. So that's good. That's good to know that they'll probably produce through June. And then I'm going to move them, and I will show you that project. I think it's going to look really neat. I've bought I've got galvanized tubs, and I bought 2 of them today. My friend Laura gave me a raspberry plant. It was an everbearing. We were going to make beds. It didn't happen. It died. I'm sorry, Laura. The peppers never did well. Look at this. 418 expected frost. 420 2 to 9 a.m. possible frost. 428 possible frost. May 3rd. That is so late for us. I bought ladybugs and let them in. I kept having aphid problems. And then I made 1 jar of cowboy candy because I got 1 little jalapeno plant produced for a little while and then just didn't do well. It turns out that I had planted them in front of my tomato plants, and there just wasn't enough nutrients in the soil to feed both of them. So the tomatoes won. So it says tomatoes I put in the sun porch arrived, and then it talks about it just says see pepper notes, but it talks about how I had hardened them off. Grape tomatoes are green and big. Big boys are fruiting. Roma are fruiting. First Roma got buggy, brought in 3 big boys, letting the grape ripen on the counter. Still harvesting all 3 varieties in August. So we had bumper crops of the cherry tomatoes last year. The Roma did really well, and so did the big boy. Watermelon looking good. Flowers are starting in July. I didn't write down. You know, when you start a journal, sometimes it falls apart. So this year it fell apart, and I didn't write down when we harvest them, but we did, and they were delicious. The squash, picked 3, lots of grubs, tossed the plants, no squash next year. It's like I'm over it. Oh my gosh. And then the cucumbers, did the fresh pickle hybrid, flowering, climbing up the trellis. On the 27th of May, I had my first batch of cucumbers. So, no, that must not, there's no way that can be 5/27 if they were flowering in June. That would be June 27. I was like, what? Not with all those frosts. I did not. Okay. Oh, that's right. Chris made kickles. I forgot about that. So that must be a 6/27. And then 7/4, I started pickling. We were still harvesting August 9th. Okra. So it got hot and lazy, produced well, but I didn't pick them. Oh my goodness. And that's literally what happened, y'all. I was very pregnant and not in the mood to go outside in the heat. So for 2023, and then here's where I started my notes for 2023. So I did make an attempt to use the same book, but it just wasn't happening. So you can see on Valentine's Day, I direct said 3 types of carrots. They didn't do well, and I had to start over. When did I pick carrots last year. When did I harvest? Look, June. Pull the last of the carrots, let the watermelon go wild. So delicious. 419. New sprouts are getting their true leaves. So sometime between April 19th and June. All right, well, they're in there now, so it's June. They're nowhere near ready to be harvested. Blueberries by March 10th of this year, they were budded. It's just so interesting to watch. The millennium sprouted. I said, we'll pick a couple of weeks. Nope, they're too early. Check nuts from last year. We'll let them fern until the width of your pinky finger. So we just all went to fern this year. Strawberries have taken over most of the 12-foot bed. We did. And that is the end of the notes section. And that is where we're going to stop for today. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at my garden notes and will join us next time for the cut flower bed and the rest of the garden. Thanks so much, y'all. We'll see you next time. Bye.